So I'm wondering, what was that first moment for you when air pollution became, something more than just a statistic and something that had real meaning?
I mean, I have to go back to when I was about 8 years old in Manchester, brought up in the centre of Manchester during the time when, of course, smogs were routine in the winter months. And I do remember a time when people used to walk in front of the buses with a torch so that the bus driver could see the curb. And so that really had a big impression on me as a child.
What really struck me when I went to Berkeley to do a PhD, University of California, Berkeley, and I flew into Los Angeles, and I'd never seen anything quite so disgusting as the smog in Los Angeles, which was quite different from the British version. It was all due to the automobile in Los Angeles, and it was disgusting. One felt like it was the end of civilization. It was less easy to see looking up at the sky until, and you'll know this, Jordan, you spend a night in the countryside outside London and you say, hey, what are those funny things up in the sky? Oh, there's stars. I didn't know there were stars in the sky. I never saw any of those in London because the air's so polluted. And you become accustomed to it until you're in an environment where you see something different. And then you realize you've just become accustomed to this rather grim sky. But that means there are particles there. And people like Stephen have shown us very clearly that those particles are damaging our health.
And hitting every organ of the body, and including the bone marrow, Michael. And I think this is the change in the scientific thinking, really, is that air pollution isn't just a lung problem, that these little particles we've been talking about, and some of the gases even, get into the circulation, and it's where they end up, which is where the concerns are. And the recent studies, even in pregnant women, showing these particles can cross over to the fetal side of the circulation and lodge in the fetal developing lung and impair the development of the lung by 3 generations of airways as a result of high pollution exposure.
Well, when the sky's not orange, it's harder to get people to notice. And I'm sufficient of a nerd that statistics upset me. I don't have to see an orange sky. And one of the ones that really upset me in London, if you look at schools and you look at oxides of nitrogen, the more deprived the area in which the school is located, the higher the concentration of oxides of nitrogen. And that upsets me as much as if I saw a child hit by a car. That hits me with the same immediacy. What are we doing? We're damaging the next generation by their going to school, being exposed to high levels of air pollution every day of their lives. And the more deprived the children, the more they are exposed. I say that hits me with the same immediacy as if you saw a child suffering in front of you.
The effects of that exposure during the first few years of life before the Clean Air Act of 1956 is still having effects now. And I think that's the important thing about the future generation, that we've got to do something about this now, not leave it for the next generation to clean up our mess.
Absolutely. I was in Delhi in January before lockdown last year, 2020, and I can't remember what floor I was on in the hotel. And I looked out the window and I couldn't see anything. The pollution was so thick. And then they said the pollution is so bad, they recommended that people stay home. And I thought, what do you do if you're sleeping on the street? I mean, the indignity of being one of these street people and the lack of dignity, the lack of proper, and then they tell you, stay home, don't be outdoors because of the air pollution. And it was such a dramatic illustration of the intersection between social inequality and the environment.
And therefore we desperately need health professionals to start beginning to speak out about this, to talk to their patients, to help them understand what they can do to improve the environment, and to talk then with the central and local governments, who of course have got the levers to create the systemic change that are needed. But unless we get health at the center of all of this, we're just going to be talking about meeting air quality limits, which is an environmental type objective, which has led us into this difficult situation we now find ourselves.